Okay, so could everybody see this okay? You guys good? All right, you guys are all like sitting over here, which is kind of like, there's a path. You're gonna have to look through me. So if it's easier, you may want to shift down here so you can see a little better. I guess it would work just as well. There's no plug over there, isn't that the problem?
There is.
Oh, there is.
That's why I'm sitting.
Okay, all right, but you guys are plugged in. So Braden's the only one that I'm robbing him of a plug because there's only one outlet that works here. But let's start where we left off. We went all the way through count, average, and sum last time, and we're starting with like today. Like I said, our plan is to go through like through joins. If I don't quite make it there, that will still be your reading assignment this week because we need to move on from this, right, and wrap this up. So let's talk about the SQL like operator. This is an important idea. I think we may have mentioned this briefly at some point, like the idea of using, I don't know if I use this term. In fact, this is the next term that it talks about is wildcards, using wildcards when you're doing searches. So you can do that inside Google. You may have other apps where you can search for things and say, I don't want to match just this word. For example, the word like. I want to find every instance of like, any variation of like. So if it's like in past tense, so liked, liking, right? Any of those things, I want to return those results. And so how would I go about doing that? Well, the way that you would do it in SQL is that you would use the like operator, okay, along with some important wildcards. So, we haven't had a way so far to say, don't only return all the records with the last name Walker, return all the records with the last name that begins with W, right? So how would we go about doing that? So like is the way that we would accomplish that. So as some examples here, if you wanted to see all the customer names that started with the letter A, I would say A, and then my wildcard character would be this % symbol, right? So some environments, the wildcard character is like the asterisk key, is the asterisk symbol, sorry. But for SQL, it's the % symbol, all right? So A, that'll match any last name that starts with the letter A, or any customer name that starts with the letter A. Likewise, if I want to return every customer name that ends with the letter A, this is what I'm going to be using. I'll do the % first and then put A at the end. If I want to return any customer name that's got OR in the middle, then I can put those % symbols on each side, right? So this would return, for example, Jordan, right? The name Jordan has OR in the middle, so that would return that name. This one here introduces us to another wildcard character, and that wildcard character is the underscore, all right? And so where %, let me write this on the board. Put my markers up. Right there. So where I'll try to turn this to where maybe Levi can see it. So %, that matches any character and any number characters. All right, so like in the case when we said OR, and we had the % sign on each side, except for this will match anything except for space. All right, so it'll match as long as there are other characters there, it will match any number of characters before the OR and any number of characters after the OR, right? But what if I want to match, like I said, the name Jordan, I want it to be in the match, and I want to match any other names that also start with just a single letter before the OR. So Ford, for example, would be another example that's got OR and only one letter before it. So what I can use then is the underscore character, which matches exactly 1. of any character. Again, not a space. All right, so if I want to match, this particular one here says match anything that starts with underscore, has a single underscore an underscore, so a single character before the letter R, and then any number of characters after that. So that would match Fred. That would match Bruce, all right? Anything that's got a single letter before it and then any number of letters after it. Does that make sense? So the R is in the second position, like it says here. We can combine those together on the other end, right? We can say this finds for this one here. Let's see if I can hide it quickly enough and you cannot see it. I'm not going to be able to do it. You guys are already looking, aren't you? I can't get it over there. But if you cannot look at the explanation here, we'll do that. There. So what would this mean? Where a customer name like A_%. What's the benefit of doing that? Wouldn't that sort of seem like it's the same thing?
At least 2 characters. Then?
Did you look, man? Yes, at least 2 characters. It forces you to have at least 1 character after the A, right? And then 0 or more characters after that, right? So this forces you to have 2. This one here is going to force you to have 3, right? Because there's 2 underscores back to back. And then here I could also put my % symbol in the middle of something. So this is going to match anything that's got an A at the beginning of it and an O at the end of it. So I can't think of a single name that starts with Alfonso. There we go. It would match Alfonso. All right. So let's do some examples of that. Try it yourself. We're going to run this SQL here. Now, if I wanted to match let's focus on country. If I want to match country equal to Mexico, I would do something like that, right? That would return all the records with country equal to Mexico. What if I did this? Is it going to work? Will it?
No, because
it will not. Because when you explicitly say equal to, it is case sensitive. All right. But now what if I do this? Like Mexico, lowercase. Look at that. That will work. So that's something important to recognize. Like is case insensitive, right? So I can say return every country that begins with the letter M. So M%, and it will return, it looks like that's the only, let's try A. Let's see if we can get multiple ones with A. Argentina and Austria, right? So we get multiple countries that start with the letter A when we do A%. So it is not case sensitive when you use like. You don't have to make sure that you match the case exactly. Just to kind of play around with some of the other stuff, I could say, so what if I do this? What's that going to return?
Let's return. Is your return that starts with A?
So it starts with A and it ends with an I, and also more than.
And I've got 2 underscores here.
More than 3 letters? More
than 4?
Why do you have to switch the order of the I and the underscores? Because you're saying that it ends with the I.
More than 2.
Well, here, let's run it and see what happens. All right, so it got rid of Austria and it only returned Argentina. And so the reason why is because I said I'm looking for a country that starts with A. It can have any number of letters after that, but then after it gets past those letters, it's got to encounter an I. And when it finds the I, there has to be exactly 2 letters after the I. So Austria only has 1 letter after the I. Argentina has 2 letters after the I. Do you guys see that? And so again, I purposely did capital I there because it doesn't matter. He doesn't care about case, right? But I'm fortunate, I'm saying I want it, it's got to end in something that is I, letter, some blank, right? It's got to have at least 2 letters after the I. So I really don't know total how many characters it's going to return. I just know it has to end in I, blank. It has to end in 3 letters, the first of which is I, right? Does that make sense to everybody? All right, so that, I mean, there's all kind of things that you can do here, right? You know, this is kind of the reverse of what I just did. I said it has to begin with A, followed by at least 2 letters, and then it can be anything or nothing after that. Percent actually will match any character and any number of characters. So I don't think there has to be a character there. Let's test that. I think it's kind of 0 or more is really what it matches. So if I do A, how can I test that? We could test it like this, Argentina, right? So if I run that, it only returns Argentina, 3 records, but what if I put a percent? Is it gonna force there to be 1 more character afterwards? So let's see, we run that, and nope, it's fine. So it's 0 or more. So this one is matches any character, any number of characters. In other words, 0 or more. And this one matches exactly 1, right? There has to be 1 there. Must be 1. It can be anything as long as it's not space, but it can't, there can't be nothing. It's not going to match nothing. So let's look at, let me just see, what if I do address, just to kind of prove the whole space thing. If I search for Cerrito, I want to make sure this is right. This is actually going to work. It does return that because it can be any characters afterwards. Let's see, any characters, but can it be this? Will this work? That will not. So the underscore has to match a character other than space, right? Whereas percent, I can't really test it well because I don't know. It would be handy if the only way I can really test if percent will match a space is if we had some record in here that began or ended with a space. There's not really a good way for me to check that. So it looks like that will match a space. So anything. At least it appears to be working that way. Let me see if it says here. Or is it 0, 1? Yeah, well, because it's 0 or 1 or more, right? So there doesn't have to be a character there. Notice this, MS Access uses an asterisk instead of a percent sign. So like I said, a lot of search tools will let you use asterisk, let you use an asterisk to say 0 or more characters. And then I've seen this before too, a question mark instead of an underscore to represent exactly one character. So this is going to come back into play whenever we start doing JavaScript programming. And we use what we call regular expressions. We're going to go through some examples of that. So this matching stuff's going to come back again. So this is kind of a good way to sort of, get exposed to that and be prepared for that whenever we see it. I'm going to take this down just a little bit. Go. Okay, there. So any questions about like? By the way, you're welcome. Are you guys actually trying it on the site? Those of you that are on there? Okay, so yeah, I was gonna say you're welcome to try that in class too and just play around with it yourself. And if you come across anything and you want to share it with the group, let me know. Could get your name on the board, right? You could be enjoying life the way Braden is right now, right? Tell him, Braden, it's wonderful where you're sitting right now, right? With your name on the board. It's like it doesn't matter what happens the rest of the day. It's a wonderful day, right? All right, so here's some other symbols. This is MS Access. Here's SQL Server. All right, so percent represents 0 or more characters. Underscore represents a single character. There has to be a character, a non-space character. Open close bracket or square brace might be another way that you say that. It represents any single character within the brackets. So let's look at one of those. That's kind of interesting. So for example, let's see, a percent. So when we run that, we get all. Oh, that's the address. Okay. I was like, what? Country. All right, so we've got Argentina and Austria. So I want to return any, I want something that's got more. Let's go back to address and see what we see. All right, so for address, we've got several that start with AV. We've got one here that starts with AL, and we've got one that starts with AD, okay? So let's say I want to return everything except for the one that starts with AD. So that's kind of a bizarre match, right? How would I do that? Well, I can say, we notice that all the rest of them have A and either V as the second letter or D as the second letter. I'm sorry, or L as the second letter. So what I can say is match anything that's A followed by, here's my square bracket, followed by V or L, and close my square bracket, and then any other characters afterwards. So if I do that, that did not work at all the way that I was expecting that to work. So let me go back and look at this. Represents any single character, but not hit. What? It says it was supposed to work that way. See if it likes L. No.
Address.
Yeah.
The address one.
Huh?
I was saying the address one happened. So it should be.
I mean, I had address before, and it worked fine. So let's try a different field. We'll say AR %. Didn't work. That is interesting. See if they've got any examples of that.
Maybe it doesn't work with only a single character in the brackets.
So here's star from customers where city is any of this. Let's see if this works. So it returns cities that start with B, S, or P. What were you saying?
Do you need 3
Maybe
letters in
it
a bracket?
needs more than one character in the brackets.
Well, I did that the first time.
We did 2.
I did A and L in the brackets, but I don't think that matters. Let's change it to just B here. See, it still returns everything that begins with B. I wonder if it's got something to do with, what if I put a B in there and then do E? Let's see if this works. That works well. Okay.
Something like the time where it just works on this tab and not the other.
We did, yeah, we had that problem last time. So that's kind of frustrating if it's going to do that with me. Let's go to country. Oh no, it was address that I was doing. So I did address, and I said I wanted it to begin with A,
V or L.
followed by V or L. It's working. Yeah, so something about that tab. That's really frustrating. So yes, so there's the AL. It did not return the AD at the bottom there. So that's what I was trying to get you guys to see. So it'll match any single character. This represents a single character, and you could string those together. Let's say we want A, it can have A and either a V or an L after that, but then after the V or the L, let's say we only want to return ones that have either, so the L has an A after it and an E. All right, so we could say we could follow that by L and E. And so now it returns, what? AVE, I did expect that one. But I thought that L, oh no, it's L and A. No, wait a minute. It's A and E. That was it. AE. There we go. So ALA, right? It matches that. And AVE, because the second letter can be either V or L, and the third letter can be either A or E. So you see how you could kind of string those along if you wanted to. Does that make sense to everybody? Like sense enough that you're going to not be confused when it shows up on a quiz next week?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That was, so the caret key means anything but those letters. So if we came over here and said, I want to return everything that does not have a V or an L after the A, then how many records do we expect? You guys remember? Remember all the addresses in here were either AV, AL, or AD. And there's only one that had AD. So this is going to exclude everything that's V or L. Do you agree with that?
What was the exclamation?
It is in some environments, but in SQL Server, am I making a liar out of myself? Let's see. Represents any character not in the brackets, finds hit, but not hot. Oh, okay. So maybe it only applies to the single letter. Let's see. No? What? Any character not in the brackets. Yeah, it's supposed to exclude both of these. See that? Let me find an example in here. Yeah, there's an exclamation point. And oh, is it SQL? Was I looking at the wrong one? No, it says in SQL Server. It says in MS Access, it's exclamation point. So I thought this was based on SQL Server, not MS Access. But you're right, they have it with exclamation point in here. So let's run that. So that's working. So let's change hours to that. All right, there we go. So now it matches just the address that starts with the AD because the rest of them started with AV or AL. So sorry about that. I thought up till now, I thought that everything that we've been doing was working the way that it behaves in SQL Server, not MS Access. So it looks like, at least for this stuff here, they're the things that you're trying, it's going against MS Access instead of SQL Server. I want you guys though still to focus on SQL Server. Okay, so that's what we've done in the past. That's really more realistic as far as what you would be using if you were programming against a database. SQL Server just supports more connections and more records, and it's just more robust in general. So I want you to be more familiar with the SQL Server scenario than the MS Access one. And then the last thing that they have in here, the last wildcard character that they mentioned is a dash that represents any single character within the specified range. So we can say anything that starts with a letter that's between A or E. So A, B, C, D, E, all of those will be returned here. And that's not working either. Oh, this was our last one that I think was broken anyway. So let's try this one, A through E. What in the world? City like A through E. Does it have to be in brackets?
Yeah, brackets.
Is that it? Yeah. That just clicked with me. There we go. So A, B, C, right? It's returning all these that start with A through E, but it won't return anything else.
Does it need to have the percentage sign on the end of it?
It does, because if I say this, it's just trying to match a single, it's just looking for a single letter, right? So we'd have to, if we did something like country
Normally it says no result, and this time it said the number of records 0.
Huh.
Because it's like, it's a valid statement, but there's nothing good with it. It's like if there's something
Yeah,
that-
I wouldn't get an error, but you're saying normally if you don't get any, if it doesn't match anything, it says no result.
Yeah, that's what it normally
Interesting.
was doing.
So like, for example, if I did, so Brazil, right, I could do RAZI, and then I could say anything that's between E through M, and that should return Brazil. And it does. But yeah, that's this thing here kind of works like the underscore, like there's got to be at least that one character there. And if we don't have the percent sign, then it doesn't tell it to say and any number of characters after it. Okay. All right, any questions overall with the like? Do you guys see how powerful that is? I mean, there's lots of scenarios where you need to match a series of items that are somehow similar to one another, but you don't want to have to, if I wasn't able to do like, I'd have to say where, if I was looking for all the countries that started with A, I'd have to say, return all the records where the country is Argentina, and then return all the records where the country is Austria, right? And then I'd have to put those two together. Or I'd have to say, I guess I could do that with a single where statement, but this is a lot more concise, right? I could say where country equals Argentina, or country equals Austria, right? And so that should get them all back. But it's a lot easier to just say like, or country like. And so sometimes there may be a way to do it without using like, but some things are just going to be really difficult to return that specific data that you're interested in without using like. All right, in, what about in? And by the way, the clock is broken. It hasn't moved. It's interesting. It was close to our starting time when we got here, but it's not going anywhere. In's really powerful as well. So another thing that we could do where we wanted to return country, where the country was Austria or Argentina, is I could say where country in Austria, comma, Argentina. So I basically like build a list of acceptable values here. And then if country matches any of the values that are in this list, then it will return those records. Okay, so it's kind of another way to do that where you're a little more explicit. Say, I want it to match this exactly. I don't want it to potentially match something that's, Australia is not quite spelled that way, but if I did like and Australia was in here, I could just say, if I did like AUSTR %, it would match Australia as well, right? But this says, no, I'm only going to match Austria and I'm only in Argentina. So it's kind of the same thing as if we said country equals this, or country equals this, or country equals this. But you can imagine if you had a long list, this would be a much simpler SQL statement by just saying country is in these values here. Does that make sense to everybody? You follow that, Braden? Okay. Here's really the power though of in. This is where in is pretty cool. Of course, you can say not. You can always stick not in there as well. There were some not options in the like section that we didn't go through, but you can read through that separately. But I can say not in this list, and so it would return every other record, right? If I put a not here, this returns everything but Austria and Argentina. But what's really cool is the ability to do this right here with the in statement. Check this out. I can say select star from customers where country is in the list, and the list, I'm not going to explicitly define that list. Instead, I'm going to do a select statement on another list that returns a bunch of country values. And so I'm going to say return all the customers where the country is in the countries that are in the supplier list. Okay. So these are two separate SQL statements, right? In the sense that I could say, select country from suppliers, and that returns all of these countries here. These are the countries that are in my supplier list. But then I say, take those list of values, UK, USA, USA again, Japan, Spain, and use those as my in list here. So let me take all of this, move it over to here. Nope, is this the one that was broken? I think this one worked. Let's try this one. Yeah. So all of the records that are being returned from my customer list, the country here will only match the countries that I got whenever I ran this SQL statement against my suppliers list. So that's pretty cool. So I could say select country from suppliers where country like, and I just want anything that starts with a U. So I run that and I only get UK, USA. What can I do to only display those values once? I'm getting repeat values here. Distinct, right? So I could throw a distinct in there. Okay, so now I just get those two values. And then I could take this SQL statement and stick it over here in this SQL statement. And so now it's going to select from customers only where the country is in the list, US and UK, which are the results that UK and USA, which are the results we got back here. So if I run that, that's all that I see over here in the country. Those are all the records that return. So that's pretty cool, right? Don't you guys think that's cool?
Yeah.
I think that's super cool. All right. That was a handy trick that I used to use all the time, right? When I was querying databases, because you're just kind of matching those two up together. So that's a nice statement, a really powerful statement. There's a lot of different situations where that is a beneficial thing to be able to do. All right. Any questions about in? Yes. You may go in the bathroom. Thank you for that in question. All right. All right. So let's look at between. This is also very cool. A very cool operator to use in your where statement.
I already went over that.
Between?
Yeah.
Do you guys think I went over between?
That sounds familiar, but
I don't remember
I
going.
think you used it.
Maybe
like,
I did. Okay.
for example.
But it's just basically you're checking to see. I know we definitely did like greater than and greater than or equal to, and we did those kinds of things, right? We can check that. But sometimes I don't want a value, all the values that are greater than 10 only. I want you to give me all the values that are greater than or equal to 10, but less than and equal to 20, right? So the between operator gives you the ability to do that. Return all the prices, all the products where the price is between $10 and $20. Now, notice it does include 20. So this is like a greater than or equal than operation. I got 29 records. I could do this. What would be using the tools that we've already learned, the keywords and the operators that we've already learned? How could I do this without using between?
Why we could have
Greater than less than
brackets and select a range.
Greater than, less than symbols, Braden says.
could you also use a hyphen? Like designate the.
10 to 20. You're talking about with like.
Yeah.
Let's see. So you're saying something like, and so here, it's kind of interesting because this is a numeric value. It's not a string value. So I actually don't think this is going to work, but let's try and see. So where it's like one, the first two numbers can be 1 to 2, right? So 1, 2, something like that. And then our last numbers can be 0 to 9, right? So that would give me 10 through 20. Do you guys agree? First number has to be 1 or 2. And the second number can be anything from 0 to 9. So that'll give me 10, 11, 12, all the way 19, and then it'll give me 20. But what's the problem with this? What else is this going to give me? If it worked, and I don't think it's going to work, we're going to run it. Yeah, it blows up. If it was a string, we could do something like this, but because it's a number, we can't use like. But if this had worked, it would have also returned 20 through 29 as well. So that wouldn't have worked. But what we have learned how to, we could say where price is greater than or equal to 10 and price is less than or equal to 20. Right? So that'll give us the same values. So this is actually a little more powerful, because what if I only want to return what's between 10 and 20, and I don't want to return 10 or 20 themselves? This gives me the ability to do that, right? You notice I've got a value here that's 20, but if I don't want to return that, I just want to return the values that are between 10 and 20, I could do that, and that now the 20 is not in the list. So it does give me a little bit of flexibility that I don't get with between. And so there are other options from a point. But between is nice when you just say, I've got a starting point and an ending point. And I want you to return everything that includes that, or anything that's in between it. I'll tell you where I use this the most in writing SQL statements was when it had to do with dates. All the time I would be constructing queries that said, I want you to return all the orders, for example, that happened from this date until now, right? Or from this date to the current date. And so here's an example of the way that you have to format the dates. It's kind of weird. So like this guy here, it returns every record that has an order date between July the 1st, 1996 and July the 31st of 1996. So anything in July in 1996, we want to return all of those orders, right? So I can use the between operator to do that. It will give me those dates. And of course, we can couple this together with other things that we've already learned. We can say where the order dates between that and employee ID equals 3. So if I do that, that's only going to return those records where the employee ID is 3. So I'm looking just for the orders that were made during that month in 1996 that were processed by employee that's associated with employee ID 3. Okay. So it doesn't mean you use these statements and nothing else. You can still use the other statements that we learned about. And they have some examples here of that where you can still use the order by so that you sort them in a particular way. Here they use the price between this and the category is not in this list of categories here. So you can couple all of this stuff together using ands and ors and really get a nice set of filtered results like you're looking for. Of course, just like we saw with greater than and less than, where they will apply to strings. And so it's looking at the, A to, it's looking from A to Z. It's saying if it begins with B, and if you say less than B, then it's going to return A because A is less than B in the alphabet. So you could do the same thing here with between, and it's just in alphabetical order. It's looking for all the product names that are between and including Carnarvon Tigers and Mozzarella di Giovanni. All right, you guys didn't know I spoke Italian, did you? But I do. So there you go. There's all the records. You can see with it alphabetized here that they are in alphabetical order between that first value and the last value there. All right, questions about between. Questions about in. Questions about in between.
In between.
There is no in between, right? So that was a trick. I don't want to see in between on the quiz. All right. Don't get confused. There is an in and there is a between, but there's no in between. All right. All right, so let's go to, so some of these windows we got open here. And we've talked about aliases just very quickly. We've already seen aliases. I can't remember what the example was. But aliases you can apply to, here they apply it to the column names, right? So customer ID comes back, and when I return customer ID, that's too big of a word, customer ID. So I just want to return ID. And instead of the customer name, I just want to return customer, right? So it just means these headers that come back from the database that identify the field that's being returned. You can specify a different name for those headers that come back. So it doesn't change what's in the database, right? The database still says that this field name is customer ID. It just says when I'm querying the database and you return the results, name this field ID just for the returned results. All right, so you can change that to whatever you want there. Does that make sense to everybody? How that works? So those are called aliases. Look at this one here. Why do they have contact person listed like that, but customers not in brackets?
Is that contact person?
Has a space.
Has a space in it. Exactly. So if there's a space in it, you put the brackets around it. Otherwise, it's going to give you an error. Let's see if it likes it if I do quotes instead of brackets. Yep, so it didn't care about that. Hey, look, we've restored the database and some of our information came back. It's so weird. I don't know how it actually stores that stuff and how it knows who I am and all. So my assumption is it's kind of stored somehow locally in my browser, but I could be wrong. So yeah, it didn't care if I use double quotes, or let's try single quotes. I want to put an S on there to make sure. Yeah, we're looking at the new one. So so brackets or quotes will work here, but that's why those are there. So this is kind of cool. Check this one out. So I returned customer name, and then for address, I'm concatenating what we call concatenating all of these values together and returning it as a single field. So our database contains an address field, it contains a postal code field, a city field, and a country field, right? And so what this is saying is we're gonna take the value of address and we're gonna concatenate. Have you guys heard that word before? It's like where you take two strings and put them together. So so fire and wood, if I concatenate those together, I get firewood, right? It's just putting the two strings together. Yes.
Why does it postal code in the middle of a comma like the other two?
That's just how they decided to format it. The way they're formatting this is they're saying take whatever's in the address field, concatenate that with a string that I'm going to explicitly supply here, comma and a space, and then concatenate that with whatever's in the postal code field. And after the postal code field, I'm just going to have a space. Okay.
So it doesn't determine how, like, it doesn't determine how the information is displayed, not how it retrieves it.
Yeah, it's just saying, like, I could put here, I could say, instead of these values, I could put plus plus between each of these. Plus plus. So that's just a string that I'm explicitly supplying. So now when I return that, it's going to have address plus plus postal code plus plus city plus plus country. So if I run that, that's how everything looks. Make sense? But I'm going to return that as a single field from the database that I'm calling address. Now, again, this doesn't change any information in the database, right? I didn't change the name of the field in the database. I just, when the results are returned to me, it's going to come back that way. All right. So that's, this is kind of like extra, this really isn't necessarily related to aliases. This is just kind of something extra that it's showing us that we're able to do. We're actually able to combine fields together while we're returning the results. So, more commonly, the way we might do this is I might say, return the address, comma, follow that by the city name, right? And then comma, the, maybe comma the postal code. And then perhaps after that, I'll do just a space, country. So now, what did I do wrong? Plus, maybe it doesn't like the double quotes there. Nope. Missing operator, customer name, address, plus, oh, right here, I'm missing the plus right there. Okay, city plus, another plus here. All right, do I have all my pluses? There we go. All right, there we go. All right, so the address, comma, the city, comma, the zip code, followed by the country name with just a space after the zip code. So I'm not planning to quiz you guys on that. It's just something that's kind of cool that they throw in with the alias stuff, that you can concatenate things together. And they show you here that some databases require, you actually have to use this concat operator here to put all the stuff together. But it's the same thing that we were just doing. And you can also do aliases for the table names. So from customers as C. So if we look at this here, when it returns the records, there's really nothing. There's nothing in the results that were returned that's obvious to us as far as what's changed. But because I set customers, the customers table gave it an alias of C and the orders table the alias of O, then I can say I'm selecting from these two tables here where the customer name from the customers table is around the horn. And the reason it knows it's the customers table is because I identified customers as C. And so I could just say C dot customer name. And then C dot customer ID equals O dot customer ID means the customers table customer ID field has to equal the orders table customer ID field. And they're kind of doing here what we're going to look at in join on this in this last section. So if that's kind of confusing to you, don't worry about that yet. We're about to talk about that in join. But just showing you that you can do aliases not only for the field names, but you can also do it for the database, for the table names as well. Questions about aliases? Yes. Yeah. How can I tie that to aliases? I have nothing. Yes, you may. All right. So let's talk about joins. Joins is our last section here. What's that?
I never thought about it.
Right. Let's see. It was enlightening, wasn't it? All right, maybe if we, instead of calling it the bathroom, maybe what if he had said to me, may I use the armory, right? And I'd have been like, we have an armory? He'd have been, well, I'm using armory as an alias for bathroom. Then it would have tied in, right? Too bad, we missed that opportunity. Yeah, exactly. All right, so join. Join is the last thing I want to talk about. There's a bunch of different joins. We're not going to go through all of these. You're welcome to read that if you want to. But the idea with joining, it has to do with the fact that, let me see if Levi can see the board. All right, Levi, I'm going to try to put this in on just this one tiny portion of the board. Not that you're going to be able to make any of this out. I should have last time made this bigger. Let's see. How do I do that? I guess I have to drag it over here. We figured out a way to use alias for bathroom. The bathroom question. You could have said, can I use the armory? And I've been like, what do you mean use the armory? You just said, I'm using armory as an alias for bathroom. See, that would have worked. Would have been an alias question then. All right, so let's do this as big as I can get it. Can he see the board? Let's see. Can you make that out? Sort of, except the lights make it difficult.
You could just type it up in the document. You can see that.
I could do that, but it's going to be kind of hard with what I'm about to do. It's going to be hard to type up. It's not just text. So, we said before, we have something like this. We have a customers table, right? Customers, and we got this cust ID. I'm just going to abbreviate that cust ID and name. That's all we're going to talk about in the customers table for now, right? So we got like 1, 2, 3, and we got Jamie, Daniel, and Brady, right? In our customers table. And then we've got our orders table over here. And in orders, we've got, we'll do order ID. We'll do total, the total that they paid, and then cust ID, right? And so this is order ID 1, 2, 3. This was $200. This was $20. This was $35. This was purchased by customer ID 2. We'll do customer ID 2 here, and then customer ID 3 there. So I saved my money and didn't buy anything. All right. So what we said before was that this is what kind of key field?
Primary.
This is a primary key field, right? There's no good place to stand here. How about that? This is a primary key field. This is what kind of key field?
Foreign,
Huh?
foreign.
No,
No, that's the primary.
this is the primary for the orders ID, right? This makes sure that each record in the orders table is unique, right? It's a unique value. Those won't be duplicated. But then what's this one, Braden? That's the foreign one, because it's pointing back to the primary key in another table, right? And these values can repeat. It's okay to have multiple values, multiple records that have the same value in a foreign key field, all right? Well, let's say that we want to return results that don't just show me the total and what the customer ID is, which is all I'd be able to do if I was saying, if I'm querying the orders table, which is all the other stuff that we've done before. But what I'd actually like to do is I'd like to return a bunch of records that have the total information here, but also returns the customer name that made that purchase. So we haven't learned any way to do that yet. But join is how you would go about doing that. You basically join these tables together, and you do that through the foreign key field. You join the tables together, and so then your results sort of look like one big table, right? Where you've got orders joined with customers, right? And so I can return something like, I can return all of these in one if I want to. I could say, I can still get my order ID and know what that is for these guys, 1 and 2, and I could get the total, which is 220, but then I could also return the name from the customers table and know that it's Daniel and Brady, right? So that can be super helpful when you're trying to get information back. So you're not having to do multiple queries to the database. You can just do one big query. Yes.
Since order, this is like gonna be like a 3-part question.
Okay.
Since order ID is a primary key, when you get something from that, will it also bring up everything following like in a column next to it?
I could, right? I could, it's just like putting an asterisk in there or specifying the columns that you want. If I put an asterisk in there when I'm querying that, yes, it's going to return everything from the orders table.
But I'm referring to just not the orders table, like that one row. It's like order ID 1, so it also comes out as 200 and customer ID is 2.
Yeah, but remember, what does the asterisk actually specify? It specifies which columns are being returned, right? And so if I put an asterisk, yes, it will return every column in there. Now I could maybe have a where clause in there that narrows it down and says, really, I'm just interested in this row, right? Our where column is what does that. Our where clause is what does that for us. The asterisk just refers to which columns I'm going to return. All right. So let's look at an example of that. As we're joining together the orders ID. So they're kind of doing what I just said here. They want to return the from the orders table, the order ID, from the customers table, the customer name, right? That's kind of what I have here. Order ID, name. And then the other thing that they're returning, instead of a total, they're returning the order date from the orders table. Okay. Now, how do we know, what if there was a what if there was a, let me think of something, sorry. Let me see how many more times I can say, what if there was a, what if there was a, what if there was a field in the customer table? What if there was a, no, I'm joking. What if there was a field in the customer table that was called date? And that date had to do with the date that that customer was first entered into the system. All right. But then there was also a date field in the orders table, which had to do with the date that the order was displayed. So they didn't call it order date, they just called it date. All right. And actually, date may be a special keyword and that might not even be allowed. But for the sake of argument here, let's say that both of them have a field named date. So how do I, when I'm returning my results, how do I specify if I'm wanting the date field from the orders table or the date field from the customers table? And the way that I do that is I put the name of the table in front of the name of the field. So name of the table dot, then the name of the field that I'm wanting to return. So customers dot, the name of the field I'm wanting to return from the customers table, right? Orders dot, the name of the field. This is where, again, the alias stuff comes into play. If I didn't want to have to write that out all those times, I could say from orders as, and I could just call orders the letter O. And I could say from customers as, or interjoin customers as the letter C. And then all of these places that I have orders here, I could put O, O, O. And all the places that I have customers here, I could put C and C. So that would work as well. And it would just be less for me to have to type in, right? I used to do this all the time because you'd have these huge queries that you were writing and all this information you were getting back. And it just got really cumbersome to type all of that out. So you do this, you'd use these aliases here to make it shorter. But I'm gonna undo all of that just so you guys can see the full name. So it'll make a little more sense here. So what am I doing in this query? I'm taking the orders table and I'm joining it. We'll talk about what inner join means in just a second. Where I'm joining it with the customers table. And what am I going to join it on? Well, I'm going to join it on that using those foreign key, primary key relationships, right? So there's a foreign key in the orders field, which is customer ID right here. Levi, right here. Right. So there's a customer ID foreign key field in the orders ID table that points back to my customers table. And so I want to return every record joining the two tables together on customer ID in this field and match it to the customer ID in this field. So that's what this join part is about, so I'm looking for where orders customer ID equals the customer table customer ID. So if I run that, I get all of these records back, which are a combination of the two tables. Now, we've been looking at customers a lot. Do you guys remember how many records were in the customers table? 91.
Whatever it is.
Yep, you're right. Customers. Look at how many are in the orders table. 196. How many records did we return? 196. And that should make sense to you because I'm returning all the records from the orders table, right? So I'm returning all of those records, but I'm joining it with the customer ID so that whenever I return those records from the orders table, I can also display the customer name that made the order, right? So I join all those together and that gives me the ability. I could say here, let's just see if I do star. I get everything from the orders table. And as it turns out, star gives me everything from the customers table as well. So it just takes everything that it's ignoring all the rest of this stuff now, as soon as I put an asterisk in there, and it gives me everything from both tables combined together. Right. So I could do that and I could see it all. But I just wanted you to note that the number of records is based on what's in the orders table, because that's what we're selecting from. Okay, it's just we're doing this inner join here so we can pull in some data from the customers table as we return all of those records. So with joins, you've got what they call inner joins, which is what we just did, and that's the one that I used most commonly. And so the inner join says return the stuff where the two tables intersect, right? A left join says I want to return everything from the left table, the first table that I specified, and then only the records from the second table where the two intersect Right join does the opposite, and then the full outer does the opposite of that, and the full outer join returns all the records when there's a match in either the left or the right table. That gets kind of confusing, and when you start thinking through that, and so I'm just going to focus on the inner join in here. I'm not, you don't even have to necessarily read the inner join portion. But that is the one that's going to kind of walk you through. And you know what? You do need to read inner join, because inner join is going to give you the examples of how you would go about joining these together. And so I'm going to leave that to you guys to, here's where we're joining 3 tables, right? So it can get really confusing. But in this one here, we're still selecting from the orders table, but there's information we want in both the customers table and in the shippers table that it's returning data from. And so I can, if I run that query, it'll give me the customer name that placed the order and the shipper name that they specified, or that maybe that's in my internal table, the shipper that I'm going to use for it to fulfill that particular order. Okay. So I'll let you read through that and play around with that to understand how to do it, but definitely, try the exercise here and make sure that you understand joins. Joins are really powerful, very useful, and we could spend a lot of time talking about those and digging into those, but I just want you to understand the basic concept. That's how you will return data from multiple tables in a single query. All right, is using a join.
So we're reading to inner join.
So you're going to go from like all the way down to inner join. All right, so that is your reading assignment for this week. Read like through inner on 33 schools. All right, and I think what I'm going to do for you so that to help you guys better prepare for the test is, let's see, what's today? So we have one more before Thanksgiving break, right? We have one more class before Thanksgiving break. Because I'd kind of like to take our last test, our test before Thanksgiving break. This is chapter what, 4? Right? Does anybody know? We've kind of lost our place because we haven't been reading out of the book lately, right? I think it's chapter 4. We've got 9 chapters in here. So what I would like to do is probably at least tackle half of 5 before we go on Christmas break. We only have 2 weeks, I think, in Christmas that we meet. I mean, 2 weeks in December. Do you guys know?
Yeah, it's 1 week next week, then we're off, and then 2 more weeks.
2 more weeks, and then we're off for Christmas break.
So we have 3 more,
3 more days, right? All right, so this is what I'm going to do, actually. Instead of a quiz next week, we're going to have a test. What do you guys think about that? Huh?
Is that gonna be just like over everything we've learned so far, or just like?
That will be over chapter 4, because this concludes chapter 4, basically.
So
Okay.
it's like SQL and stuff.
From the beginning of chapter 4.
From beginning of chapter 4. So what did we learn at the beginning of chapter 4? It's been a while, right? So you're gonna have to go back and look through that.
Was that when we first learned about databases?
What did we learn before we learned about databases?
Like audio and.
No, there was something right in between, huh? No, this was all about data. So do you guys remember the homework assignment? No, this was about, that compression was what chapter 3 was about. Chapter 4 was about data. And so we started by learning about spreadsheets. You guys remember the spreadsheet assignment that we did? Right, so spreadsheets were sort of our precursor to talking about databases. And I only spent like 1 lecture on that. So next week we will have a test in class, but here's what I'm going to do. We're going to do the test at the end of the class. All right. So I'm going to sort of verbally quiz you guys on what you're reading this week so that I make sure that you guys understand it. And then we'll have a test at the end of class. All right. And so if you get done early, then you can leave early. Does that sound good to everybody?
So beginning of chapter 4 to inner join.
It will be, yeah, exactly. Basically, chapter 4 and W3 schools material. All right. And maybe I'll bring some donuts or something like that, right? Can anybody not have donuts? Anybody gluten-free?
I can't have chocolate.
You can't have chocolate donuts, but you can have regular donuts? Perfect.
Well, I can't have chocolate.
Right, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that would be really weird. I can have chocolate anywhere else, but not on the donut. All right, see you guys next week.
Oh, are you gonna hand out our last week's school?
Oh, yeah, here, let me give you this. Wait just a second. Thank you. I totally forgot about that. Let me stop the recording here.